Hello from a very sunny Runnymede, just outside London, near Windsor, on the Heathrow flight path. Why am I here? Well, of course, this is the famous signing place of the Magna Carta of 1215, the Great Charter, the symbol and the kernel, the starting point of British and global democracy, signed by the evil King John. Let's find out more. Well, here at Runnymede, they've got a little sort of what looks like a parliament, really, a meeting place, and it's to obviously symbolise the barons coming to meet King John. And I'm indeed sitting in King John's chair. Who are these people? Why are they coming here to talk? Well, King John is pretty much regarded by most people as the worst king of England. Just terrible management, various things. One of the worst things he did is he lost the lands that his father had won in France, in northern France specifically. Here at Runnymede, they've made a sort of like parliament, a meeting place sculpture here with various different chairs, and this is to represent the barons coming to meet King John in the seat where I am now. Who are these people? Why did they come and meet here? Well, let's start with the king, King John, regarded by many, many historians as the worst king England has ever had. Why? Well, bad rulership, causing a civil war, and crucially, he lost lots of land. Indeed, he was called John Lackland. He had lost lots of land in France, which his father had fought a long time to win. And so he had to escape France, was living in England. And what he was doing was he wanted to try and win back these lands in France, so he had to tax people. He was taxing all of these rich barons left, right and centre, unbelievably extortionate taxation, and obviously they were getting very annoyed. There's also the fact that his brother, John's brother, Richard the Lionheart, had previously been king, this brave king on crusade. He was now dead, so people obviously were comparing him to this gallant great brother that he certainly was not. So why did they meet here in Runnymede? For what purpose? Well, the Magna Carta is about two things. Money, I've already discussed that, the taxation, and the other one is justice. Justice for King John's ridiculous behaviour, fighting these wars, behaving badly, stealing land, etc., etc., etc. So the barons said, we're going to try and fight you back. And indeed they did. They had skirmishes. There was a civil war essentially going on in England at the time. It involved the barons and it involved King John. The barons had just taken London over there, and they said, essentially, they're forcing the king's hand, forcing the king to say, oh, I've been joined by a dog, forcing the king to say, fine, we'll meet here at Runnymede and we shall sign the Magna Carta. And so they were met here to discuss that and see what's going on. So what did the Magna Carta actually say? Well, there was lots of stuff about fishing rights. The Archbishop of Canterbury wanted to make sure that he could easily access his palace on the River Medway. Very important stuff here. There was all about measurements of liquids as well in London. It did actually say that London was going to be the centre of power, which I suppose is something we still live with now. But crucially, one of the most important things is Article 39 of the Magna Carta, which is still in statute in British law today. And essentially, to paraphrase it, it means that people are allowed a free trial, they are not allowed to be persecuted unfairly by the monarch, by those in power, and that taxation has to be approved. That is why the Magna Carta is so significant, because it says that statement within there, curbing the power of this evil king, this tyrant John, to tax people willy-nilly for whatever he wants. Now, there are people who are critical of the Magna Carta, and one thing they would say is, well, it lasted so little long. King John, essentially, and the barons, almost immediately after signing it, said, we're not really going to follow this. And indeed, the Pope annulled it, and within 6 or 7 months, they were at war, and indeed, after a year, John was dead. So it kind of was dead in the water, really. It wasn't resurrected again until about 1297. Future kings and barons thought, actually, that was a bit of an okay idea, and draw out some of the rules. But then it was sort of hidden away somewhere to get dusty. Not much happened until the English Civil War in the 1640s. An MP called Edward Coke tried to use the Magna Carta to take power away from Charles I, and his tyranny that the English Civil War was all about. So it kind of was absent for a few years. And then when that happened, they killed their king, regicide, English Civil War, watched the English Civil War video for that. Again, put away somewhere, not really to be seen much again until the international people get involved. Before I go, I just mentioned King John died there. It's worth saying here, yes, he only died a year later after this. And actually he died of dysentery, essentially very bad diarrhea, caused by eating raw peaches. And maybe he ate too much of them. Maybe there was something wrong with them. Maybe he had other issues. But his death is essentially was killed by peaches, which is a bit of an ignoble way to die. But this, again, was not a great king. Now here at Runnymede, I am at the American Bar Association's memorial to the Magna Carta. Quite a famous little statue memorial here, and actually this 800-year celebrations with various different dignitaries, they came and assembled themselves around here. But the most interesting thing about this is what we're going to talk about now, is who built it. It has this sort of American look, doesn't it? And indeed, that is because it was built by Americans. And on the floor here, it has memorials as to say who built it, the American Bar Association. And indeed, it says it up on the top in the recesses in here. Who are the American Bar Association? They're essentially the most powerful lawyers in America. Why on earth would they have a memorial here? Well, of course, it is a memorial to the Magna Carta as a symbol of the legal process, the due process, justice, democracy, the idea that lawyers, certainly in America and many other countries, stand up by. So it's really extraordinary that here in Britain, we have such a key memorial for American people, or certainly a group within Americans. It's almost as if they take their this history more important or more seriously than we do, perhaps. There is another connection to America to talk about now. Now, the American Bar Association Memorial is in a nice, peaceful garden here, when planes aren't flying over, because Heathrow is just over there. But this is an example of the internationalism that we can bring here, the international impact that Magna Carta has had, and that's perhaps which really pushes its significance forward. The first international focus is that the founding fathers of the American Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, people like that, they took elements of the Magna Carta and incorporated it into their constitution. It had almost been forgotten in England, its original places, and Edward Cook, who we just spoke about, he used a little bit, but it was just not as part of the zeitgeist as much it was for those founding fathers, especially the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the which has various different rights in court. Especially, I want to plead the Fifth. You can't have the double jeopardy law. You can't be accused of something you're not, doubly, etc., etc. So it's a key part of the American Constitution. Hence why a lot of the American nature here. Also in this garden, Nelson Mandela came and he planted a tree here. The Prime Minister of India at certain points in the 1960s came here and planted a tree. And Queen Elizabeth II has also planted a tree here. So lots of foreign dignitaries come here. The final thing I think really important, international focus, is, and it involves actually a very significant woman, Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was working with the United Nations in 1948, and she helped to draft the Declaration on Human Rights, the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And she said that this is going to be a Magna Carta for the people of the 20th century. None of what was actually in the Declaration of Human Rights matches what's in the Magna Carta, but that's not the point. It's this idea of symbolism again. Magna Carta is a symbol of freedom, of democracy, of justice, that nobody is above the law. And Eleanor Roosevelt took that to the United Nations and enshrined it in the Declaration of Human Rights. So we're on this long journey with Magna Carta from 1215 right up to 1948. This is the rather impressive Anor Wick yew. I'm just across the River Thames, from the field at Runnymede. This tree is well over 1,000 years old, so definitely was here at the time of King John. And there is a strong rumour, written by the Victorians albeit, that this is the site, the location of where King John actually signed the Magna Carta. It kind of makes sense because just over there is the ruins of St Mary's Priory, which would have been there as well. So there would have been a building here and a monastery. So maybe he called on, and the land is very different to what it is now with marshes and places to cross. So Maybe this is the exact site where King John signed it. But I think it's a good site for us to end. I've talked to you a lot about the legacy of the Magna Carta, but maybe we can talk about it as a whole. The critics of Magna Carta say, well, it was nothing really that special, certainly on a European standard, and it was sort of forgotten about, really. It was not only until the Americans got involved that perhaps the significance of the Magna Carta is found. That's one theory. But I'm more on the camp that actually this was the start of something. Okay, it might not be the official document that our democracy is based on, but it started the journey, started the idea that the kings are not above the law, that everybody, including kings, can be taken down, they can be served the justice, and it started that kernel of rights that all of us in the Western world now appreciate and enjoy. So maybe, I think, more than maybe, I think definitely the Magna Carta is of great significance. Thank you so much for joining us and me on this journey around the Magna Carta. I hope you take more into it and look into it. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.